Hi, welcome back. This is Radiating Waves with N3DEZ. That's me, Desiree Baccus. And I am here to go over a few things with you in regards to helping you be able to amplify your amateur radio contacts and things out there in the real world. So in episode 3, this is also episode 3, but this is going to be the shortened version. So when I got to recording the last session, when I started looking at it after the fact, it was very long. And so I think we need something a little bit more concise with that same information, so you don't have to be there for 15 years. So I'm just going to go over them real quick, and hopefully we can get this in less than half an hour, because it's still very important. It's about communicating your stories. And so as an amateur radio group or organization, it's very, very important when you're amplifying your organization or amateur radio as a whole to the broader, community. It's important that we share, our founding story. So where did you come from? And how did it begin? Your organization or your club? Talk about that. It's very, very important. Your recruiting story is about why someone would want to become an amateur radio operator. What got you into it? Why you would want your neighbor or your mother or your father or another organization to become an amateur radio operator, or maybe be exposed to it or come to field day or things like that. Why are you recruiting people to amateur radio? Show your passion for amateur radio, whatever that looks like. If you're into digital modes or contesting, speak to that. Start with that. If you're really into POTA or SOTA or something like that, show people. Take a 30-minute video and express that. If it's about the community and about bringing your group together and about sharing opportunities together, show them that. Speak to that. Whether it's just a little blurb for social media, or if you're doing a whole article, definitely talk about what brought you into amateur radio and what excites you about amateur radio, and what is it that you want to share with others. And that's going to be a really great recruiting tool for you. So write down those kind of things. And you can have more than one. So if you're into radio astronomy, write about that. If you're into, like I said, the contesting or getting your certificates, that ARL has a ton of them out there. Whatever that is, that's your recruiting story. So it's really amplifying your own passions in order to bring somebody in, right? Okay, so your leadership story is about why your group does what it does, right? So how do you lead in your communities? Are you, what are you doing with teenagers or things like that to bring them into amateur radio? Are you sharing that expertise with Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or things like that? People want to know, and that's really, truly important. So your leadership philosophy, why do you do what you do, and how do you do what you do, right? So that kind of a thing. What's your vision? Your vision story is your other one, and that's about where are you going? Where is your organization growing to? What do you see amateur radio in 5 years, in 10 years for your organization? Whether that's amateur radio as a whole, or is that amateur radio as your club or your organization? Where are you moving forward to? Where are you individually moving forward to, right? So today I do a lot of contesting, or I do a lot of rag chewing. I like to talk to people on 20 meters, but I really want to do a moon bounce. I really want to, in 5 years be able to say that I've learned CW and I can, communicate a conversation in CW. Where are you going? What's your vision ahead? So a lot of people think that, well, I'm an amateur radio operator, this is good enough. Well, that's fine too. Do you want to keep doing this? Do you want to get that next certificate? What's the next certificate that you want to get? Having a vision story and being able to communicate that online is very, very important. So for you internally as an individual, but also as your group and your membership. So think about that as your moving forward or vision story. Your case for change. This is important. People don't really spend too much time on this, but it's really, really important that you make a case for change story, and that you have that for moving forward. Why can't you stay where you're at? Why is it that you need to move forward? What is driving us as an organization or a club in order to move forward? We're great here, we're happy here, but we have to keep moving forward. Why can't we stay where we're at in this like little comfort zone? Why do we need to open ourselves up to being accepting of people that are into the digital modes? Or why are we accepting of, our base wanting to learn CW? Why is it that we need to be accepting of being open to having more kids come in, right? From the Eagle Scouts or the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or 4-H groups. Why are we reaching out to other organizations like that? Why are we going to do community service by our club going into convalescent hospitals once a month and sharing that opportunity with aging adults, or that kind of a thing? What are we doing that's our case for change study, and why do we need to keep progressing for community service or being amateur radio operators? What drives us to not stay stagnant as amateur radio operators? Why are we exposed to that STEM education of growing and learning and pushing the boundaries and finding the next best thing? And how do we modify our antennas or, do those kind of things for easier deployments or, that kind of a thing. So being able to share that is the case for change study, and that's very important. Your strategy story is about how we're going to get there, right? So now you've got this vision, you know where you want to be. How are you going to get there? So that's your strategy story. What's your plan forward, right? So think about that, and that's another story that you can tell. Again, these stories can be small. They don't have to be big. They could be just a paragraph that you put out on social media. But sharing this with your base will help you grow your base, right? So what is your plan of getting there? Whether that's for your fundraising or, upgrading your club shack or, your antenna or, what is the strategy of getting there? What is your plan of getting to that vision? So think about that. Club organization and corporate values. So that is another story that you guys need to tell. What is your club or organization's value, right? So I went into this too deeply before, but just remember it is what your core competencies are. So what are the core competencies that drive your organization or your club? Make sure you amplify those. So whether that's education and outreach, if that's technology and how you're expanding technology, if that's doing things that have never been done, if you're doing education for moon bounce or radio astronomy, if that's your wheelhouse, project that and share that with others, right? And so that really is your corporate values of what services that you're providing, right? Maybe you're really into community service. Maybe you're really into promoting your community connection within the amateur radio group so that your members feel connected and that there is a family there in your community, and you're amplifying your town and your organization that is sponsoring your club, right? So I've been a part of several clubs that were my base was sponsored and was through my work, right? And so a lot of our organizations are through our communities, our home communities, our cities, our towns, our counties, whatever that looks like for you. Make sure that you amplify that as well, right? Make that a part of your values, whatever that is. So what's driving you and your group in amateur radio? That's your values. And so you need to be able to speak to that and amplify that. And that resonates with people in your area or your community or your business or whatever it is. However, whatever that means, that's your corporate values story that you need to share. So make sure that you amplify that, and you will have great success with bringing members in. Your next one is your sales story. Don't forget about that. And it's about what you are offering to your customers. So if you don't like the word customers, who are you serving? And maybe that's other amateur radio operators. Maybe that's the only people you're serving, and that's okay. So whatever that looks like, that's your sales story. Whether you're selling products, right, and you're getting a monetary value back, or if you are selling a connection, human connection, connectivity, and that greater connection that's going on through amateur radio, which is what drove me to be an amateur radio operator. It was the family, the community, the connections that I get. And it's also why I like getting on the radio and being able to connect to another person on the other end, whether that's through a computer, FT8, I love that. And I also love speaking directly to an operator with another call sign and finding their story, right? What is your story? Everybody's got one. Every organization's got one. Every club's got one. And so that was what drove me. But what we need to find in order to bring people to you and into your clubs and into your organization is your sales story, and help them to identify within your club what resonates with you, so they can then attach themselves to you and become a part of it, right? Then they're vested, then they become part of your membership and your base, and that is going to help you contribute more into the things that you're already offering, right? So it helps with alignment. And so that's your sales story with what you're, to help your customers or whatever you call them align with your identity. How do they align themselves with you? And that's what you're selling. So that's all part of public relations and marketing and communications and the whole nine, right? So help them resonate with those pieces of your organization that they can help amplify and reflect within themselves, right? So positive things. So then you also have your customer story, right? So a lot of times we forget to amplify our customers, which is our membership, the people that we serve. If we have gone out and we've done an Aries event and we supported a town because a water main broke, right? And we are holding up the communications for that, or a fire in that community, make sure that we get a snippet from them of their appreciation or whatever, and amplify that on your websites, on your Facebook page, put their quote out there and share that with the rest of the community. That could be, again, on your social media feeds, but it also could be in an editorial thing to the newspaper. It could be a full-on article to QST magazine. It could be in a full-on article to Air and Space Museum. I don't know, whatever that connection is for you. You can do those out there, right? So that's your customer story. Talk about bringing them in. Even a quote into those kind of publications from them will make it amplify and go further, right? So make sure that you're documenting those. Even if you're having a fest or a convention or you're hosting something, make sure you're getting those voluntary surveys back from people. Put surveys out there. Little surveys, little papers, right? So you could take a regular sheet of paper and put 5 questions on it and let people answer. They could be yes or no, or 1 through 10. Make them very easy, and then leave a room for them to write their own little blurb. And it probably is going to be very, very short. Don't leave a lot of space because they just won't do it. And so the shorter, the easier it is for them to leave a comment, the better, right? And so then document that at the end, and then you can really get some clarification on the questions that you might be asking, right? Are all of our core competencies recognized and understood by our base? And if it's not, then you know what you need to amplify. If you want to get customer feedback, again, that's your customer story. Make sure that you grab that, right? So one, you're telling them, about who you serve and how you do it, but also on the customer story is, the feedback that we're getting from our customers and how do we pull that in. Both of those are stories from our customers. That's our customer story. that help to amplify our organization or our clubs. So remember to do that. Marketing story is how you're serving the higher good or the higher standard for amateur radio operators, and how are you leading in your area or your organization or in your communities. So that is a marketing story about the connecting it to the greater good. How are you supporting Aries? How are you supporting spreading education and trying to get new amateur radio operators into the community? And I'm not saying you have to have every single one of these stories, but if you have them, amplify them. That's what I'm saying, right? So these are the stories that you want to tell and you want to share and you want to get out there. So that is your marketing story. How are you serving the greater good, right? The greater organization, whether it's how are you serving your ARL division? How are you amplifying what you're doing so that way at the end of the year that your public information officers know who to amplify for the ARL awards? How do we know that we're, setting this up that chain in order to serve the greater good? It's not about like putting yourself out there and getting all the kudos and the pats on your back. It's really about amplifying amateur radio and helping to spread that so we can keep amateur radio for many centuries and many more generations to come, right? The generations before us, they have laid a great foundation that got us here, but what are we doing in order to get the next generations up, right? Are we reaching our hand back behind us and helping people up, or are we, keeping them away because we don't want to do or don't want to embrace what they want to embrace? That's all that I'm asking, right? If we have a technology, you see that computers are advancing, everyone's walking around with cell phones, and maybe we didn't have that when I was a child. Do I then not help those that rely upon that kind of information and help to bring them up, or because I'm afraid of it or I don't want to embrace it? No. I have to know that I love amateur radio, and if I'm going to get them into amateur radio, maybe I need to embrace that stuff. And then how do I do that? How do I build something that will keep them here or bring them in? And so that's something that I, need to think about. What about your partnership story? So who are you partnering with in order to do things? Are you working with your, what local resources are you working with in order to get things out? And that could be something as simple as you're working with your local grocery store so you can have a outreach day in front of their store, for World Amateur Radio Day or something. Are you working with your parks and recreation so that they can do something in the park? Are you working with your, community leadership, city council group or something like that in order to do education and outreach? What are we doing, and who are we partnering with, and how are we expanding that, and how do we amplify them for doing stuff with us, and how are we amplifying us in their wheelhouse, right? How do we bring the community in, let's say, Merced, California, which is all agriculture and things like that? How do we share amateur radio within that community? How do we bring them into this fold? And so how are we doing that? Who are we partnering with? How are we sharing each other's messages in order to amplify both, right? It's called co-branding. And so we can get on their websites and they can get on our websites, and we can share both of those things, and it's amplifying for both organizations. So that is our partnership story. Let's think about those kind of avenues. If you haven't already, that's a wonderful thing to think about. Think about who you can partner with, and including other clubs, right? A lot of times in amateur radio, it's kind of like a teamism thing. It's my club or their club. What about if our clubs got together and did something? What if we did a, all of Colorado barbecue cookout or a chili cook-off or something like that? It would get everybody out to the event and things like that. But let's think about those kind of things. What can we do in order to partner with other groups? Whether it's, hey, the Tri-Lakes Valley group and the Denver group are a camping trip that we're going to do up at this one campsite, that kind of a thing. What can we do to partner with each other in order to amplify our own efforts, right? At that camp out, we can have talks. We can do, an antenna shootout. We can do, what activities can we do? Can we do a fox hunt? What kind of activities could we do, even if it's just camaraderie and hanging out? It's important that we amplify those things. So talk about your partnership story, your communication story, which I know this all sounds like communications, and it is. It totally is. But you're going to talk about how you're encouraging collaborations and connections. Human connections, connections to other countries if we're trying to do something like that, or maybe if we're partnering with like a sister city in another state or another organization or division, why can't we do something like that? So let's think about those connection stories when I'm talking about communication. When I talk about a communication story, it's really about connecting. How are we connecting, and collaborating with other organizations or other clubs? Are we doing a Girl Scout to Girl Scout connection? Are we doing a convalescent hospital to convalescent hospital connection that we can make, communication, things? How are we amplifying amateur radio through connection and things? Like I said, it could be within this country, it could be within your state, it could be within your division, it could be within, between countries, get a sister city and work with you guys. Are you creating an event here that they can also create a like event there, right? And so that's what I'm saying about a sister city, between countries. That's always fun to do. If you have family, especially, that's in another country, like let's say your family's here, but it's also in Indonesia, and there's amateur radio groups in both locations. Can you try to hit each other? Can we try to make a contact? Can we have events? Can we both do a antenna shootouts? And then pit our best antenna against their best antenna. What the parameters were, and that kind of a thing. What kind of things are we getting back? So how are we promoting amateur radio outside of the traditional kind of things? That's your communication story. So I'll just go over those real quick with you one more time. That's your founding story, your recruiting story, your leadership philosophy, your vision story, your case for change story, your strategy story, your club, organization, or corporate values story, your sales story, your customer story, your marketing story, your partnership story, and your communication story. So I know that's a lot, but like I said, you don't have to do them all. Whatever resonates with you, this is all just to help you in order to help get the word out, right? What kind of framing could you start with in order to build your own story? So I'm sure there's things that I've missed. So if I have, please add them below and leave a comment. And if you like all this information, please feel free to subscribe. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.